podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and I'm very excited to bring you this episode with a man who's seen the sport from a few angles. As a rider, he became a legend of the Reading races, as well as spells with Poole, Stoke, Bellevue, Newcastle, Birmingham, Lakeside, and not least his hometown Newport, plus in management with Birmingham and the Great Britain Under-21 setup. And currently he's the ringmaster of Speedway's greatest show as FIM Race Director of the Speedway Grand Prix and Speedway of Nations Series. It's my great pleasure to welcome Phil Morris to Humans of Speedway.
Hi Ian, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's great to get you because I know that you're usually a very, very busy man. Well, pretty much all year, really, I guess, from usually April time through to the end of October. But your year has been radically different this year, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely a big difference, as it is for everybody in these tough times. But there is, as we say, a light at the end of the tunnel. So we should be getting back to partial normality in the next few weeks for myself. So I'm actually looking forward to getting back out to other tracks, and yeah, it'll be nice to be back in a normal world of travelling. Hopefully I stay safe. That's the main thing. But yeah, it'd be good to get back to the norm.
We'll start with the present then. We'll start with what's coming up then, because the obviously a bit of doubt about how it would all pan out. But now that we know that there is going to be a Grand Prix series and a Speedway of Nations final as well for you to get involved in, how's it all going to work on a practical level for you then? Do you have to sort of go out and stay out in Poland? And how's all that going to work for the riders?
Yeah, well, obviously it's tough with the current situation, and Poland, all respect to them for leading the way in what they're doing with their leagues, and everything seems to be working reasonably well for them. So yeah, obviously a lot of people will moan that 6 of the 8 rounds are based in Poland and it's a world championship, but unfortunately, as you know, we can't run nothing in Britain at the moment. Other countries are the same. Scandinavia, we had problems with. Denmark, we had problems with. Russia, we had problems with. So yeah, it didn't leave us with a great amount of options to make it a reasonable championship. It's going to be similar to the Polish Speedway. Everyone will need negative COVID tests before they can enter the stadiums, things like that. So we'll have lots of things in place. Obviously, the social distance and the PPE, that'll all be part of the show. Unfortunately, now it's a norm to see people wearing masks, and that's the way we'll be going.
And no doubt you'll have seen how things have been going in Poland. That must have been very reassuring, considering most of it is going to be happening in Poland, and the Speedway European Championships have passed off well. So that must be encouraging for you.
Yeah, of course. It's as well as the Polish League. Obviously, the SEC series has done well by getting all their events off in Poland. And obviously, congratulations to Robert Lambert for winning it, and also being the first rider into the 2021 Grand Prix, which is, I think he deserves it. He's going very well this year, and he'll be a good addition to next year's series.
It was a particularly exciting series, I think, this year as well, and with that added prize of a GP place too. But also brilliant for British Speedway to have a European champion, and already definitely having a confirmed GP rider in 2021 as well.
Yeah, obviously the riders going it wanting to be European champion, but this year there's that added carrot dangle being part of the Speedway Grand Prix, which is really good that there's been a bit of a sort of crossover and agreement between the two series, because obviously the Grand Prix, we want to be the best, we're the world champion, but we also respect that the SEC series run by One Sport is also very professional. And we worked at sort of an agreement. So between BSI and One Sport and the FIM, between us all, we decided the winner of that could be a feeder to the Grand Prix, which and I know Robert Lambert, his goal was to be European champion, but I'm sure that the added bonus of being in the Grand Prix next year was a very welcoming gift, let's say.
Yeah, especially after his experience with race-offs last year and so on, and missing out. I think to have it all done and dusted before everybody else has got to be a good place to be.
Yeah, of course. And, people have already looked at the similarities of Ty Woofenden, a year sort of in the series, then a year out, and he comes back a lot better. And maybe Robert could be that, another one like that. We had a year last year, and I'm sure he will admit he didn't do himself enough justice. He started off quite well, but then drifted off. But a year out may have been a good thing for him now, and come back strong in 2021 and, be up there challenging potentially.
Before that, though, we've got the 2020 series to look forward to, which it's coming very soon at the time of recording. There were some changes last year with the introduction of qualifying. Will those things remain in the COVID era in Poland? Will there be any other changes from a fan's point of view as to how the series is going to run?
I wouldn't like to say, obviously, it's not really for me to say it. It will look a little bit different because obviously the idea of IMG, who own BSI as a company, they want as little amount of time at the stadium as possible. So we have 2 events on Friday and Saturday, and the events will run as normal, but things maybe before, whether it's practice and qualifying, will be adjusted accordingly.
And for fans who are planning on making the journey, obviously we've seen some fans in the Polish League games, a certain amount of capacity anyway. Is that plan going to continue into the Grand Prix as well? Will people be able to get tickets and get into any of these rounds? Obviously,
by looking at Polish League matches now, they've been allowed to have 50% of fans. But also, I know this week there's been some hot spots and they're having no fans potentially at some tracks. So it's a very fluid situation, and just keep a lookout for tickets. I know it's going to be difficult because we sell Polish Grand Prix out quite easily. So if there's only going to be a 25% or 50% fans, surely it's going to be tough to get hold of them tickets. But yeah, when the ticket sales become available, I'm sure that people, hopefully they can get hold of some tickets, and let's fingers crossed it doesn't change between then and the event, because you only got to look at these test events in the UK that they all had planned, and they cancelled them pretty much. So people that managed to get the tickets for these sort of test events to the British government, and they've cancelled them. So it is changing every day, and we're doing our best. We want to get as many people there to watch it as well as watching on TV. But obviously we're guided by government guidelines, and if they allow 50% fans in Poland, then we will do that. But of course, we're again, like I say, we're dictated to by what the government say. That's the voice of Phil Morris, the race director for Speedway Grand Prix, the new series, of course, on the way. We will have a world champion in 2020. And Phil is my guest in this episode of Humans of Speedway. Now, going back to the start of your career, Phil, let's go right back to the early days. I mean, how did you get into Speedway? Because coming from the South Wales area as you do, the South Wales Valley, is not really notorious for Speedway. Rugby, of course, the main sport there. But how did Speedway come into your life? Well, I think my dad and my family used to go and watch Newport Speedway potentially, and Bristol Speedway, I believe. So I was obviously there and thereabouts, which I can vaguely remember. My dad used to race a little bit, not a massive amount, and my uncle used to race at the time when I was growing up. So we used to go along with him, mainly the grass tracks, which he raced. And yeah, I had a little motorbike. And of course, once you get a little bike, you want to be like the heroes you see in the stars. So I got invited along. I was with my uncle, I think, at the grass track and having a little go around in an adult. And they said, we have a youth event, please come along. So I went along. That would have probably been the middle of the 80s. And yeah, it all snowballed from there. It was about 9, 10, 11 when I sort of started. The first year was very tough. I was very, very good at sports in school. I could manage to turn my hand to most things, which was quite good. Within a year of probably starting, I think I got, second year of racing, I was British champion. So it was a quick jump up scale. Grass track, a great place to learn. It's led to so many riders and who have gone on to have illustrious careers. I mean, are we missing a vibrant grass track scene these days? Yeah, the youth grass track scene back then was very, very healthy. And I know you've had many riders on your Scott Nichols and people like that, which are probably a few years below me. But the amount of riders that's come through youth grass track, I think if you take out probably the Eastbourne guys like Dugard, Norris and Barker, I really think pretty much everybody else, apart from the few motocross guys lately, have come through youth grass track. So it's definitely, I'm not saying a loss that there's not so many people doing it now, but it's a little bit more you've got more Speedway for the youth now, which is good. But at the time, the youth grass track scene, you'd get 80, 100 riders at some events. It was crazy. It was a great footing when you see, like when I was talking about when I was young, sort of 9, 10 years old, and you probably had Mark Lorham then being the senior guy, the sort of 15, 16-year-old, looking up to him, and then Joe Screen below him, all them guys to look up to and look what they've come up to in the sport. It was, a good grounding for British youth riders at the time.
And all of those names you mentioned obviously went on to have fantastic careers of their own in various different disciplines and some multiple disciplines of Speedway as well, didn't they?
Yeah, and of course, with the grass track scene, it's more grass track, long track. So a lot of the guys, combine both. Like Simon Wigg and Kelvin Tatum are obviously fantastic examples of being very high level at both sports. But yeah, there's so many names. I was only looking at some videos the other day, and it's even the guys that, like myself, I was never, the best in the world, and that the middle order guys, the solid journeymen that were always thereabouts, they were all, you look at the grass track scene back then, and every name you can sort of see where they've gone. So it's a shame that it's not as popular and as, let's just say, vibrant as it was. And I think that's probably one of the things which does not help British Speedway.
Yeah, sure. And when you get to the stage of taking it seriously then, because obviously you've got to be 16 before you can do a professional meeting, I mean, it's also coincides with the time in your life where you're choosing your direction, and probably you got your parents on your back sort of making you make life choices of where you're going to head. And what made you pursue Speedway a little bit more professionally?
I think I was very lucky. In school, I was a very good student in a sense. I had very good exam results to sort of much A's on everything. And funny, when I listened to most Speedway riders chat, they hated their school life. I actually loved my school life. I'd go back tomorrow if I could. It was a good time in my life. And yeah, I had choices of things to do and jobs to do and places to go, but sport pretty much was my life. I represented my counties in most things, represented Wales in different sports. And it was definitely a decision for me when I was 16 to which direction I would go at, because rugby was definitely the local pull for me. The problem was at the time there was no professional game, and it's what we call boot money. So at the end of the game they'd give you £200. So at the time I actually chose Speedway as a sort of educated decision that I could make a career and a living out of it. So that was the reason I went Speedway rather than rugby.
Well, Speedway's gain, definitely rugby's loss. I'm surprised that rugby wasn't actually a professional sport in Wales then. When did it become professional?
Probably a few years after. At the time, I think, when I was looking into it, it was the top guys in Wales. They were employed by, let's say, Joe Blogg solicitors. They never worked here, but they were paid a wage through them. So there was ways of getting a wage out of rugby. It was a little bit more different than what it is now. And obviously, as the years go by, rugby way overtook Speedway. And, you're talking of hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of contracts now for, good Welsh players. So even millions. So it has changed a lot. But at the time, I would think that was sort of 91, 92 when I started. And that was probably the start when things happened in South Wales with rugby, when they started becoming contracted to the clubs and things. So yeah, it was one of them periods where I had to make a decision, and I'm not, I wouldn't change it now, but yeah, rugby was my other love at the time.
Yeah, I used to live in Cardiff for a few years, and it just seemed that everybody that you bumped into either knew someone that played rugby or was a rugby player in some form or another.
Yeah, if you're Welsh, rugby is in your blood. I think even if you don't enjoy the sport, it's when there's a nations match against England or Scotland or Ireland, you'll see, wives and grandmas that have no sport affinity whatsoever. They'll put a red shirt on and they suddenly become Welsh supporters for the day. It's definitely our national sport. And to be honest with you, it put Wales on the map around the world. If you go to many countries, you say Wales, they'll say, rugby. It's linked to Wales. And again, you talk about the Millennium Principality Stadium. It's owned by the Welsh Rugby Union, and it's our spiritual home of Speedway as well as my local team as well.
Anyway, it all works out well because in your first season, you were a title winner and you did it in one of the great British teams of all time. So, it wasn't a bad place to start, was it?
Yeah, of course. Coming straight out of the Youth Championship, I'd done very well. And like I say, I won a few British Championships and jumped in at 16. Decided to join Reading, which were in the highest league at the time. And I joined at the back end of 91 because my birthday was in September. And then my first full season, 92, wow, what an introduction to the sport. You're looking at Per Jonsson, Jeremy Doncaster, Armando Castagna, Jan Anderson, the Swede, these kind of guys which were absolute top, well, not just top level, best in the world type of guys. I was a bit in awe at first, and they looked after me so well, and I work with Armando Castagna now, and I still remember he sort of took me under his arm a little bit and fought a few battles for me because I was a 16-year-old. And it was a fantastic season to be involved in something like that. And we won a league and cup double in one of the, even look back now, when I look back at the teams then, it's as hard a league as you'll ever see. I was really proud to be there. I raced in most of the meetings. Okay, I didn't go out and get massive points, but I won some races, scored my points, and I was proud that was a great introduction to the sport for me. A big decision to go direct into the top league, but really happy with it and had a great year.
Now, growing up as a Bradford fan, I hoarded a load of Bradford programmes, and not long ago I was rooting through my garage and I found a box of programmes from the 1992 season. And I didn't realise that was your first season, and obviously you're in the programme there, along with Armando Castagna and Per Jonsson, and what a team it was. But one question I want to ask is, as an opposition rider coming from Reading or wherever in country you were riding and coming to Odsal, which was a much different stadium, massive stadium, big track. What is it like riding there as an opposition rider?
Yeah, it was one of the, for me, what a fantastic track it was, especially on the pits turn. When you walk the track, you realise how crazy the banking was. It's way over what's allowed, I believe.
Really?
There's only a certain amount of banking you can have. Well, from my experience now with FIM and things, I'm not really 100% sure about the British rules, but I know they normally mirror. But the amount of banking was absolutely daunting almost at first. But a lot of the things I remember about Bradford was, because it was obviously Super League or whatever it was called at the time, the changing room was absolutely fantastic and all new and with baths and big showers and really nice. And it was a bit of a treat to be going there almost. But for me, the track was absolutely out of this world. And I'll still remember I was like a 16-year-old. I think I was in a race with Doncaster on my side, and I think it was Tatum and, I don't know, Sean Wilson or someone, a really tough race. And I was winning it for like 2 laps, and me and Kelvin Tatum passed 2 or 3 times, and I ended up coming second. And I can still remember that. I think I've got a video of it. It's Bradford was definitely a place that holds good things in my mind, definitely.
Bradford and Reading too, big rivals, particularly in 1992, and with Havelock and Per Jonsson, obviously very, very strong on the individual front. I mean, when you look at the makeup of those teams, were things tougher back then than they are now in terms of the strength and depth?
Every heat there back then was so tough. There was no easy. When you look at, and not disrespecting what happened in this day and age, because everyone rides for their points and their teams, but the strength of the teams then, and you must, if you're a Bradford guy, you must remember, Havelock, all them guys in the team together. And I think Screeney was there 1 year, Lauren was there. The amount of riders they had. In this day and age, you've got one big hitter at the club. That's the reality of it. Then you had 5. It was, it was tough but I wouldn't change it, I don't think. I think I'm happy with what I did. And of course, everyone wants to do better in their chosen sport. But yeah, I'm proud of what I've done, and yeah, I look back on it fondly.
You got some great honours. I think many honours that a number of riders will be very pleased to have on their mantelpiece at the end of their career. And Reading, obviously we've talked already, a very special team, but the one that you spent the majority of your career with as a rider.
Yeah, I did I think it was 19 years I did in Speedway, which was obviously a good innings, they would say. And I think, to be honest with you, I think about 14 of them were at Reading. So I'm proud of being, I think, the most points ever scored in Reading's history, the second or third most appearances ever in history. I think it's only Jan Anderson that's in front of me, or maybe Dave Mullett, one of them too. But yeah, to be up there in that kind of thing, obviously I had a big career at Reading and did a lot of things with them. But yeah, when that sort of ended in 2004, just at the time I just felt I just needed a new challenge and a bit of a breakaway. So I did a few years. I did a year at Newcastle, a year at Bellevue. But during these times, I'd had a few injuries and I was probably never the same. 2000 to 2004 was my seasons when I was racing to sort of a 9-point average in the Premier League. I was up there with the top guys in the league, and that was when I felt I was doing myself justice and things were going good. The years after that, I enjoyed them a lot. Like the year at Bellevue was fantastic. I was pitted between two of my good friends, Joe Screen and Jason Crump. And again, just to be in the squad with them and Kenneth Bier and Simon Stead was a pretty impressive team to be involved with. And yeah, things like that. I've shared tracks with these guys, and I'm proud that I've raced with Jason a lot of times, and he shepherded me round and looked after me and pointed me where I should be going on the track to keep the guys behind me. So yeah, I've had some good times in Speedway that I'll definitely hold in my mind, and I wouldn't change them for the world.
You're listening to Humans of Speedway. My guest in this episode is Phil Morris, now the FIM Speedway Grand Prix race director and race director for the Speedway of Nations as well. But proud Welshman and Reading Racers legend. We'll find out what his Speedway paradise looks like before the end of this episode, where he's going to design his dream meeting and who'll be in Phil's all-time 1 to 7. Stay listening to find out. But Phil, one thing I'd like to ask you about is we've talked about the early days of your career and we've talked about the latter days of your career. What keeps a Speedway rider motivated as you go on your journey through the sport? Because I imagine your aims and ambitions at the start of your career are possibly a little bit different to the ones as you get towards the back end. I mean, how did it go for you?
It's tough to sort of, when you're 16, you just sort of go with it, and trying your best. And I think probably mid-90s, I was improving from 92, 93, 94, 95. And I had about 3 years where I just really didn't do anything. And I think in about 98 or 99, I was thinking to myself, if I don't improve, I'm not enjoying it enough to carry on. It was a little bit of let's just say a moment. And then in 99, I seemed to really kick on in 2000 and 2001. And then suddenly, me, I'm very much a competitive guy. If I'm not doing well, I'm not enjoying it as much. And I think when I started doing well again, then everything becomes easier. And, like the things you remember, like I'll never forget a 21-point maximum at Reading against Hull when they won the league. And I think I could have raced all night and I never would have lost the races. As a speeder rider, it's difficult to explain, and many sportsmen use the word flow. Once you sometimes get in a situation where just you don't even have to do anything, it just happens. And I think the mental aspect of Speedway is a lot more prominent now. But at the time, I bet any rider will listen to this and listen to this point exactly. Some days you'll go somewhere and you'll ride your absolute backside off and end up with like 6 or 7 points. I think, how the hell has that happened? And then the next day, on the same track with the same bikes, you'll think, I didn't do anything, but I've scored 14 points. How does it work? It's just on the day, sometimes, everyone has a good day in work and a bad day in work. It's the same as you, when you go to work doing a voiceover, you're going to, one day you'll get it perfect first time, and the next day it'll take you five shots, it's never the same each day. And I think from a rider's perspective, that is big. The mental aspect of everything is good. It never really got to me mentally. I was very strong-minded, and I never really had any problems with it. But I know it played an effect on how you performed.
Yeah, I know that certainly Scott Nicholls mentioned it in that first episode we did. That particularly, I think he was relating it to the Grand Prix series, in that how managing the mental aspect of that, and you know, it's easy for people to say, well, it's just another meeting, it's like turning up anywhere else, but you know, it's not, and it's framing that in your mind and coping with that extra pressure.
I think it's difficult because Speedway, you know, as everybody knows, it's a performance-based salary. So if you don't score points, you don't earn money. So it is a little bit dog eat dog on track. You know, you're racing for every point you get, and you know, many times you'll see it, especially on laps 3 or 4. If you and your teammate are 3rd or 4th, they'll still be battling for that point because it's money to them. It is difficult to explain it to the normal people that, you know, mainstream sports, football, rugby, you know, they get a salary, and if they have a bad game, they still get paid their salary. But as a speedway rider, if you have a bad night, you can actually not earn much money, and if you bend bikes or blow up engines, you're actually a lot in minus. So I think from a rider's perspective, it's very difficult. But as you say, then going to the top level of the Grand Prix, it is then maybe not so much about the money, because they know they've got enough to cover their costs and everything, and they just want to be world champion. So that element gets taken out of it then. So it's a little bit different. You know, it's tough to understand, but I see it close up now, the difficulties of the Grand Prix and the different riders, how they approach it mentally differently, how some are very happy to chat, some want to keep in their own little zone. So everyone's got their way of dealing with it. But I can imagine, because I listened to the Scott Nicholls one earlier just to see what was going on, and I can imagine, you know, going out at Cardiff with all them people. I was proud enough to be the first guy on track to test it for the Benfield Sports at the time, so I tested the track, but that was with no fans there. I can imagine what it was like. Amazing, but also pressurised as well.
And now in your position as being the race director of the Speedway Grand Prix, I mean, have you heard from riders how it is riding at those big locations like Cardiff, like Warsaw, where you've got tens of thousands of people packed in, way bigger crowds than they're used to? I mean, how does that affect them when they get on the track? I mean, can they hear what the fans are shouting, and can they see what's being waved with flags and so on? I mean, how does that distract them in any way when they're on track?
The people I spoke to, like I've been lucky enough to ride in some big events in Europe, like places like Marmande, where there's 20,000 people. It's a strange thing as a speeder rider when you're on that start line, especially when the green light comes on. Very difficult to explain that there's actually nothing in your mind. And to do that as any kind of person, to actually think, I'm not going to think of nothing, is almost impossible. I think from a speeder rider, you're so zoned into what you're doing, you're just really concentrating. You want to be that first guy to the first bend. You want to drop your clutch first, and you want to make sure that that's what you're doing. You block out everything around you, I think. But as soon as you cross the finish line, that's when reality kicks in and you hear the roar, I would think. So from a speeder riders, I know most of the guys I know, they just zone into what they're doing and they're professional. It's the same as a football player. You know, they're playing without crowds now. They're playing exactly the same as they would if they're playing in front of 40, 50, 60,000 people. And when you're a professional sportsman, I think that's what you've got to do. Of course, for footballers, it's a lot easier because they do it week in, week out, where the riders don't ride in front of the fans at Cardiff every week. But it is a hard thing to do, I'm sure. But I'm sure that most of them get into their zone and just crack on with the racing.
I'm going to come back to the Speedway Grand Prix series in just a few moments, obviously, because we can't not talk about your times as the race director there. But I just want to round off your racing career first, because it was injury that ended it. And then after that, it was a management role because you took over the under-21s and the under-16s. And I want to know, how did your own experience of Speedway at that time as a youngster influence how you wanted to guide this generation of talent?
Yeah, I think definitely I would like to think I've got a decent brain in my head, which has probably helped me to where I am now after Speedway. And yeah, as soon as I decided I couldn't carry on because of my shoulder, it caused me so many problems, and the surgeon sort of said, look, damage it again, you're looking at a shoulder replacement. So it made my decision for me. And within a few weeks, I think Graham Reeve made the call, which I'm very thankful for, because it was the start of rolling the ball to where I am now, potentially. He said, would I be interested in, being under 21 British team manager and looking after the under 21 and under 16 scene? And yeah, I had a quick think about it and said, yeah, I'm up for that. So yeah, I went straight pretty much from finishing my career straight into under 21, under 16, which I really enjoyed. I was always one, I like giving something back to young lads. If you can give them something that they will remember, then why not? It's a very close-knit sport. It's almost a very family sport. And yeah, I very much enjoyed a few years, like 3 or 4 years doing that. Yeah, it was a good time.
And it must be very rewarding to see that progression in front of your very eyes as these riders improve and they get into bigger teams and they go into bigger leagues or maybe get involved internationally. It must be very rewarding for you to keep tabs on how these riders are doing, because the riders you were working with then are now very much coming to the fore, and one of them you can keep an even closer eye on next season because one of them's Robert Lambert.
This is genuine now. Some of the guys don't believe it when I tell them, but I still check some of the lads that I was Robert Lambert being one of them. The first day I saw him, I was honestly wowed by him as like a 9-10-year-old, maybe 11, I'm not sure. But the way he controlled a bike just had me in awe, I'll be honest with you. So yeah, he was one of the guys at the time, Robert Lambert. And when you look at the ones that's coming through now, I do keep a lookout on them. And yeah, I'm proud to see they're doing well and improving in the sport. And yeah, it's nice to feel maybe, even if it's only a pinch of salt you've put into their career, that's enough. You've done something. And yeah, I still look out for them now and see how they're all doing.
And when you're talking about Robert Lambert there and what caught your eye, I mean, what specifically is it about his riding style that is different and probably is leading to the success that he's having?
Well, when I first saw him, I think it was Buxton, if I remember, which I know is not a very easy track for the best of riders. And his control on a bike was pretty much phenomenal for, not even a teenager. And there was a few others in the same sort of ilk. And you just think, wow, there is talent. And people don't realise that the problem, I think, when you look at Britain against Poland, using that as an example, I can remember taking a rider, I'm trying to think, would have been Carl Newman, to a Polish under-21 qualifier. And as a taxi pulled up, 3 kids got out of a car in their school uniforms, got changed, jumped on a bike and did maybe 100 laps. And in Poland, they all try and bring as many youngsters on as possible each track. They provide them with bikes and mechanics. And of course, the more numbers you've got, the more likelihood you've got of making a superstar. That's, reality in any sport. You're lucky if we're not going to get winter sport stars in the UK because we haven't got winter sport. Yet Austria, Switzerland are going to have a lot more. That's, they've got more people doing it. And I think that's where we fall down, that we don't have as many riders doing it and as many opportunities in this country, in Britain, as they do in maybe the other countries. So that's a big difference that we have.
And on that note, I mean, Speedway in the UK, going back sort of 40, 50 years, used to attract massive, huge crowds. And obviously we're not in that position now, and some tracks struggle more than others. Where do you think the crowds have disappeared to for many of the tracks around the UK? And why does Speedway perhaps find itself not quite as popular as it has been in the past? And what's your take on how to fix that?
I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a number of things, in my opinion. There's lots more entertainment for your money now at the moment. So there is more options, which we didn't have maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago. So that's a big start. But for me, I think the BSPA needed to have somebody in charge as a CEO to make the decision for the benefit of the sport. I totally respect that it's run by promoters and everyone's got their own agenda that suit them. I get that because they're putting the money in. But in my eyes, the issue with British Speedway is it's not a business. If a club can break even, they're happy. For me, that's not a business. I've run business, I own businesses. You run a business to make money. So British Speedway should have been looking at making money. And again, with all the Sky money that came in, they should have been investing in youth. They should have been investing in not just, and I'm going back, I listened to some of the podcasts today and money just got spent on riders, which was the truth, which is great for a rider, but not for the sport in general. And I've been there, you all want as much money as possible, but also you should expect your promoter to not be losing money. It's not viable if people are losing money. And the reality is less than a handful of clubs are probably making money. That is the truth. And yeah, if it's not viable as a business, then it's not doing what it should be doing. So I think there should be changes. And it's easy to look at, things like darts and your snooker and things which have made a difference over the last 10, 20 years. And they're still getting what they need to get. But there is no magic wand, I don't think. Youth investment and development should have been massive. What they do in Poland by putting the reserves in every meeting to youngsters, I think is paramount. Should have been done a long time ago and should have been kept. Like I say, a CEO of the BSPA that run it for the best of the sport, not for the clubs, which again is not going to go down well with the clubs, because if someone says, well, this is not good for me, I'm going to lose more money, well, you shouldn't be losing money in the first place. Things have got to be done, whether they have to cut their costs, cut the riders' costs, which riders won't like, of course. If you're only getting X through the gate, you can't play X plus Y to the riders. It's just not business. And I think it hasn't been run as a business is number one. You need someone at the top that can run the sport independently. It'd be great to have a Barry Hearn or something like that, or someone of that ilk. Yeah, there's lots of things that culminate, in my opinion, that's made it sort of fall. But the sport is great, and I think it's a great product.
You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan. My guest in this episode is Phil Morris, FIM Race Director for the Speedway Grand Prix and the Speedway of Nations series. And one thing that's come up, Phil, in previous episodes has been how we can polish up presentation on a domestic level at the various tracks. Obviously citing the Grand Prix as being the leading benchmark, really, of how to put a meeting on. I mean, what can British Speedway learn from the Grand Prix series?
It's not difficult, this is my sort of job. Once a year, I meet with every organiser, clerk of the course, normally in February. We spend a day going through how we expect A to be done, B to be done, X to be done, Y, Z. We want the show to look the same, whether it's in Cardiff or in Timbuktu. Apart from the stadium, we want the show, we want the feel, we know how it's working. I can tell you, we had 10 Grand Prix last year, and apart from one of them, they all finished within 5 minutes of each other, from Heat 1 to 23. And that's around about 2 hours, 20 minutes. But going back to what we say, we've got a big, heavy work manual, and all a promoter, whether it's Torren, whether it's Prague, they can go through that book. And as long as they follow that book, it's pretty much laid out in front of them. So for me, British Speedway should be having somebody do a work manual that everyone follows. So it's the same everywhere. They start the same. They do this the same. They do that the same. 4 heats grade. The grade should only be 6 minutes long. And all these things, if you put it in place and everyone starts learning from it, but it's very difficult when you've got British Speedway where they'll probably say, well, you shouldn't come and tell us what to do. Instead of thinking, let's do it for the benefit of the sport. I'm lucky to be involved in the Grand Prix. I'm very privileged to be involved in it. But I see what goes on behind lots of things go wrong. That people, as long as people don't see it in the crowd or on the TV, we've done our job. So it's about minimizing the fault and the problems behind the scene, and so not covering them up, making sure they are fixed before it's known to the crowd, in a sense.
Yeah, it's that great sort of live event situation of trying to present a graceful swan on the surface, but you can not see the legs kicking like mad underneath the water.
No, you guys like yourself, you just talk a bit more and make it. But no, it's very difficult to, we do a production meeting at every Grand Prix. And when we're looking at timing, we're not talking hours or minutes, we're talking seconds. So at 7:03 and 30 seconds, this will happen. Because I know at 7:03 and 50 seconds, riders get pushed off. That's my first thing that I work off. So, and people don't realise that these attention to small details, it's just once you've got it ingrained, it becomes normal. And I can promise you, the riders actually get used to it. We do 4 races, bang, 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 bang. Then we have a 6 or 7 minute gap. So they know, where they've got to be. They know how it works. The riders know what's happening. And once everyone knows what's happening, it becomes normal. And it's not difficult to do. But I just feel a good, solid sort of blueprint that every track does X, Y, Z. It helps because everybody knows when you go to, whether it's Birmingham, whether it's Poole, whether it's Edinburgh, whether it's Berwick, wherever you go, the show will be the same. Of course, you have different riders. Let's try it. I'm not preaching here because, it's not my job. I'm involved in the Grand Prix. But yeah, you look at Poland, the reality is they followed what the Grand Prix have done. But you look at a lot of the things, they've got a work manual, they do things at this time, at that time, this has to be done, then that has to be done. And it all falls into place and looks a better product, in my opinion.
And really the whole production needs to be well timed because you've got TV and TV demand specific timings. TV stations and TV programs run by the second themselves anyway, so they're going to expect a meeting like this to follow the same guidelines. Yeah,
obviously with the TV, we've got a 3-hour start to finish schedule, and I can assure you nobody wants it to go past 3 hours because some countries are going to lose the feed and things like that. So touch wood, which I'm doing right now, we've not failed with that one yet in 5 years of being involved. Of course, this is why sometimes I can be a little bit in front, and then I'll in a sense, I'll choke the event back a little bit because it's going so good. But you only need to have one crash, which breaks 2 airbags, the air fence, and that's a 20-minute delay, 15-minute while they change them. So it's about working and knowing the things and feeling it in a sense. But yeah, it's all linked to being a professional show, and I think we've got a very professional show in the Grand Prix, and I'm proud of it.
You're listening to Humans of Speedway. Phil Morris is my guest, the FIM Race Director for the Speedway Grand Prix. And Phil, when we're leading up to an event, what are some of the things that the race director has to do, days prior to the tapes going up? I mean, what's on your checklist and what things are you worrying about in the days leading up to an event like this?
Pretty much non-stop. So I've got a few days before each event where I'm literally checking everything, and you have to trust the local officials and the local clerk of the course, who's the guy I work with, and you're basically saying, look, have you got this in place? Have you got that in place? We check everything once, we check it twice, we check it 3 times. I'll tell you a real good story. In Germany a few years ago, we put things in place to fix this problem in the past, but it was 3 years ago, I think it would have been. 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, I said, I haven't seen no tyres arrive yet. Now, we normally would have had around about, I think it was 100 tyres. So at 12 o'clock on a Saturday, I got a meeting. I said, look, I've not seen them. And they'd not been ordered.
Oh.
So we've got a massive catastrophe of 12,000 people coming to the stadium, and we have no tyres. So again, this is where Plan B kicks in. You ring everyone you know, and we had an organiser from Denmark bring a load of tyres, some from Germany. Some of the riders had tyres, so we pulled everything together, and we just about scraped through, but nobody knew about it. But there's something we learned, and from now on, we have to have assurance that the tyres are there 3 days in advance, and we have an email signed off saying it's been done. So these little things you learn. There's so many minute things. It's really difficult to sort of pinpoint it. I will have a meeting that will take 2 or 3 hours going through a checklist. And again, I'm not proud to say it, but my first ever Grand Prix, which I'm sure a lot of people remember, was Warsaw, when everything went wrong.
Yeah.
Now, me being a little, maybe not naive, but when I asked the local organizer, have you got your second set of tapes? Yes, we've got them. When the problem with the tapes happened, they said, right, get the second set of tapes out. Oh, we haven't got them. So this is where we had a big problem, where I trusted. Now I actually have to physically see that they're there. Not that I don't trust people, because it comes back on me and it'll be my issue or my problem. Yeah, definitely. There's so many things to check, and you have to check the riders' licenses, and it's not the air fence has to be XYZ. We have to have at least 4 spare panels, because if you broke 2 and you didn't have spares, the event cancelled. So there's so many small things that you have to be in place and be ready to sort of check, and it's a massive checklist.
When it comes to the actual event, we see you on TV, usually, near the pit gate or whatever, and you've got earpieces in and radios around your waist belt. I mean, who are you also in contact with, in addition to the riders who are there in front of you? I mean, I imagine the TV producer, but is it the referee you're also speaking to as well?
Yeah, obviously I'm working with the referee. I don't talk during a race, but between races, if you need to warn somebody or any other reason, wants to talk to the start marshal, I'll go and do that, or I'll facilitate it, get somebody to do it. I've also sort of got TV involved where I'm telling them, and we've got to a stage now, again, because I've got so used to my job, as soon as we finish heat 4, they will say, can you give me a time? And I'll say 7:21, we're back on air. I'll be pushing off. I'll guesstimate much bang on when we're going to push off for the next race. So the producer then, Steve Saint, he knows how long he can have a break for, how long they can go to the studio for, and it's much easier for them. And that's something we've brought in over the last few years. So you've got the TV side, you've got the referee side, then obviously I deal with all the pits if a rider's not happy and wants to speak to the ref, I facilitate that. Of course, riders then will come up with their grievances about the track, about the rider, somebody else, whatever. So I'm sort of in the middle of everything. And of course, I work for the FIM, so that's my ultimate responsibility, is to make sure the sport inside of the event is correct.
I've got some questions for you now, because we opened up a little bit of a mailbag for you, Phil, and there's some Grand Prix-based questions in here and some not quite so Grand Prix-based, so we'll come to those in a moment. First question then is from Clive Upright, who says, hi, Phil has done a fantastic job, but what would you change about false starts and riders then going back to the pits? And it also asks, are your modelling days finally over?
Yeah, the modelling days are done. That was back when I was a bit younger. But no, on a serious note, with the start, I'm a firm believer of we're probably the only sport that doesn't really have a randomised start. Pretty much every rider knows it's around about a second, green light comes on, the tapes go. Once your brain knows it's a second, that's when you guess, when you sort of anticipate it. My idea is to put a randomizer in there, so 0.5 seconds to start, 2 seconds, it's got to be between there, so the riders don't know when it's going to go. It's going to be different every race. For me, I think that will stop a lot of it, because what's happening now is riders know when the tapes are going, give or take. Once your brain becomes accustomed to it, it keeps happening. So my solution would be a randomizer, like they have in Formula 1, where nobody moves, like they have in MotoGP, where nobody moves, like they have in Motocross GP, where nobody moves. It just, if you look at what other people are doing, and I understand they've all got brakes, them bikes, I get that. But yeah, I could go on all day talking about this. I've done a lot of research. And basically what's happened, we've got faster and faster and faster with starts over the last 10 years for some reason. I don't know why. And that's been one of the part of why people are now making more jumps or anticipation, in my opinion.
And we keep hearing people talking about transponders. There seems to be a lot of support from many riders on modernising things. And the system that we're currently using is quite old, isn't it?
For me, I think start tapes, again, yeah, okay, they're part of the sport and they've been there. And Speedway is one of them sports where a lot of fans don't like change. It's one of them sports where if you change something, hell has broken loose. It's one of them things. So if they did decide to get rid of tapes with, transponders, as they do in the other sports, where if you move past the line, that's it. And people will be all up in air over that. But let's be real and let's try and get the sport into the next century and try and be a bit more, perhaps that's, something that we need to look at is an alternative, the tapes with transponders and randomized starts. Maybe in the future, who knows.
One from Gary Schofield, it says, could you ask Phil how close we're likely to be to possibly ever having a GP at Bellevue? Would that ever happen?
Quite possible. Obviously the stadium is good, the track is good. People don't realise that putting up temporary grandstands is not a simple and cheap option. At the moment, Cardiff brings 40,000 fans every year, give or take, no problems. Don't want to get too much into it, but obviously the Welsh Government helped with the promotion of Cardiff. And at the moment, with the promoters BSI, I don't think they want to devalue that event by giving fans an option to do two, potentially. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have new promoters, Eurosport, Discovery in a few years. Who knows what their plans will be. But I think the stadium, the track is obviously ready. But the problem is, I think it's only like a 5,000 capacity stadium as it is now.
Yeah.
Not really that viable for a Grand Prix. And I'm sure people will say, yeah, but sometimes you only have 6,000-7,000 at Kursko in Slovenia and things like that. Yes, I agree, but it's the only event they have in that country. So it is difficult to give you an exact answer. Potentially, yes, there's a chance. Probably not next year, but maybe in the future, you never know.
Peter Oakes was saying that the guy who's the head groundsman at the new Tottenham Stadium is a massive Speedway fan, and he personally would like to see one in there. So if you can work on that.
Well, yeah, Peter's one of the guys we always we're big Liverpool football fans, so we talk about half Speedway, half football, I think, when we chat. But yeah, I know he said there's a guy at the stadium. Hey, of course, it's very difficult. I'm sure, as you know, BSI, IMG own the Grand Prix series this year. They're going to potentially lose money this year. So it's about them being a business, making money, same as what we spoke about. So maybe in the future, it'd be great to have something here. But at the moment, I think Cardiff is our spiritual home, and long may it continue, I would say, at the moment.
Yeah. Definitely, and definitely missed this year. Final question from Paul Hunsden, who says, it's not a Speedway of Nations or a GP-related question, but can you ask Phil how close he was to becoming a professional wrestler, and was he trained by Kendo Nagasaki?
Right, so this is a good friend of mine. He used to be my sort of commercial manager, Paul. He ended up, I think he was a sort of centre green announcer at Reading. But before we get to the wrestling, I remember one event, these two guys came along, both 6 foot and 6'3", and we got told that they're from WWE. One of them was Pretty Boy Johnny Valentine, I think, and the other one was the Anaconda. He'd made all this up. The next thing I know, they carry me on their shoulders, we're having photos, it's in the local press and everything. And some people on the internet went, we've looked these guys up and we can't find them anywhere. So he's having a bit of a joke, and I think it may have been him that sort of hacked my Wikipedia and actually said that I was big into my wrestling and I was trained by Kendo Nagasaki. So I think it's probably his fault. People ask me these questions.
Right.
Alongside, I was part of Boyozone, a Welsh tribute band, Boyozone, and I won a singing contest in Prestatyn with Sunita. So yeah, these are some of the other things that people ask me, which are not quite correct, but they're a bit of fun.
Okay. Right. Let's move on to the to the Speedway Paradise section, I think, and let's see where we go with this. Because I think otherwise, I don't think we can top that. This is your dream meeting, really. So the perfect track, perfect location, and the riders that you'd like to see in there as well. So we'll kick off with the first question. The track, purely for racing. Now, obviously, doing what you do, you must have a lot of experience of different surfaces around Europe and the world, in fact.
Yeah, I do. It's a really tough question, actually, because when you've spent 14 years at a track, which you know, like Reading, where you know at the back of your hand, it was very good for me because I was not the greatest gator, but I could pass. So that's got to be up there. But there's a few others I thought about. The one especially was Trelawney. I only raced here probably 4 times. Absolutely loved the place, and it was an amazing little track. During my later years, I definitely enjoyed your smaller, tighter tracks like your Edinburgh and Arena Essex, which are not going to be on people's radar. But I think, not saying it, this is no disrespect to, I'm not trying to butter you up, but I do think Bradford may have been my favourite ever racetrack.
Wow. There you go, you see. And
So,
might be coming back, they keep mentioning.
Potentially. So, yeah, Bradford would be there. And I'll also throw in Marmont as a long track, separate to Speedway, because that was a special 3-cornered track with 20,000 people there. And, yeah, so Speedway, I'd go Bradford. For long track, I'd go Marmont.
And did you do ice speedway as well?
Telford, not the proper stuff. Yeah, I did quite well at Telford. I've sort of been on the British Championship rostrum a good few times and that. But yeah, never the real ice racing. I've actually worked on it for the last few years. The FIM have got me involved to try and improve the feel and the flow of that championship. So the last few years I've been quite involved in it. But yeah, not actually on the real big spikes.
Yeah, that is crazy speedway, that.
Yeah, very crazy.
Now, the stadium that you'd put that track in.
Stadium, okay. So obviously, I would like to pick Cardiff because of what it is, but I know it's not a real Speedway stadium. But for me, being my local stadium, I would have to pick that. But thinking of a real stadium as, let's say, there's a track there. I will say Horsens, again, another one that's not a real track and it's built there. For me, Horsens was a perfect Speedway venue. 12,000 people, very tight to the track. When I was there, I just felt this feels right for Speedway. It's great to be in Cardiff and Warsaw, but that's only one-offs. But I thought that felt great. But for me, you're probably looking at probably Leisner or Torrent for me. They're both. Torrent's a good brand new type stadium and tight, where Leisner was a bit more of an open stadium. So I'd probably go for one. But then saying that, Gorinchem, only a 6,000 or 7,000 stadium, but what a beautiful little stadium built. So it depends on what you want, you know. So for me, for a Speedway feel, because we're not Premier League football, we're not, you know, Champions League football. I think Gorinchem is actually a beautiful little built stadium. It's all sort of built in sections. So I'm going to go for Gorinchem as a bit of an outsider for everyone else.
Nice. It's the first time it's been suggested. I was going to deliver my Torrent fact for you there. Do you know that Torrent's track is based on Bradford?
And Per Jonsson loved Bradford, so that's his input into it.
Yeah.
He told them how to do it. So yeah, a lot of it is based on that. I am aware of that one. But good fact though. Good fact.
It's a good one to have with your sleeve. You know, it breaks the ice at parties. If you go into a Speedway party.
That's the same when I'm the first one on the track at Cardiff. You know, it's a nice one to have on the CV.
First ever round Cardiff. I mean, how did that track feel when you first rode it? Because I mean, I know it varies year on year.
To be fair, it felt like it was billiard table smooth, like concrete. There was no give. I remember doing a start in the back straight. It made no rut or anything. It was, they just said try outside, inside, wide, tight, cut back, and there was not a ripple on the track. And of course, And a good fact that you may know, what caused one of the big problems was a rider, I think it was Piotr Protasevich, did a practice start in the middle of a corner, and it caused the track to sort of move a little bit. So that's what caused some problems there. There you go, another interesting fact.
Right, so our practice starts on corners banned now?
They were, but the track's got so good now, we don't need to worry about it now. They're built so well, it doesn't cause a problem now. Officially, they shouldn't, but they still do it. But
you get away with it now. Let's move on then to the, I think the bit that people look forward to the most, your all-time 1 to 7, the dream team from Phil Morris. Off you go.
Right, well, number one is an easy one for me, Per Jonsson. Without doubt, racing with him for a few seasons, he was the most gifted person on a motorbike I have ever seen. What he could do, how he could get out of trouble, how he kept his wheels in line. From a speedway rider, to watch him when everyone else is locking up and doing things, and he's almost road racing around, was phenomenal. And of course, he was my hero. I looked up to him, and it was such a tragedy when he had his accident, because I think I only ever seen him come off his bike once in like 2.5 seasons. That shows how good he was, and he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So my number one is definitely Per Jonsson.
Fantastic rider, and a big fan of riding the Bradford track as well, as we mentioned before. Let's go then to your next choice. One world champion on the board. Who's next?
I'm going to go with number 5 then, my other big hitter, and that's going to be Hans Nielsen. Before I was 16, I used to watch him and be in awe of him a little bit, and just how much of a dictator he was, especially when he was off gate 4. He would be at the white line before you could blink, and he'd win a lot of his races by repetition, I think, more than anything. But yeah, that'd be my 1 and 5 big hitters.
Yeah, I think as big hitters go, Per Jonsson and Hans Nielsen, a fairly good start. So who else then would we have in the makeup of this Phil Morris all-time 1 to 7?
Yeah, well, partnered with Per Jonsson at number 2, I'm going to put a good friend of mine, also former world champion, Jason Crump. That's a good opening keep partnership, Per Jonsson and Jason Crump. I know they were good friends as well, and Jason's got a lot of respect for Per. Yeah, Crumpy's, one of the hardest racers you'll ever meet, and you wouldn't get every time he gets on a track, he raced in my farewell event, and I knew he wanted to win it. He wasn't there to just put on a show. He wants to win everything he's in. So yeah, and a lot of respect for him, raced with him and a friend. So yeah, Jason Crump 2. Okay,
so who's going to be at number 3? Or are you going to choose a middle pairing?
So my middle order pairing, 3 or 4. I'm going to go for absolute legends of British Speedway, Mark Lorham and Joe Screen. Again, both good guys. I would class as friends. They were a bit older than me in the youth grass track, but I looked up to them, and respect to them. Their racing ability for both of them to be able to put the bikes in places and do things, phenomenal. So them guys as a partnership, I don't think either of them are good gators, so you'll definitely have some good races when they're out.
Yeah, and probably a good time off the track as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. They like to enjoy themselves, and I'm sure that they'll look back fondly on everything they've done.
So Per Jonsson, Jason Crump, Mark Lorham, Joe Screen, and Hans Nielsen. You've got 2 reserves left. Who's it going to be?
So number 6, I'm going to go with Armando Castagna. A few reasons. When I joined Reading, he sort of was my big brother in a sense, and looked after me, and I've told the story a few times, and I quite like it. That we was racing in I think it was the best pairs, I think, and he looked in the program, and he said, "What does this mean, Phil?" So I read it, and I said, "They may not be the favourites on the track today, but they're the team you wouldn't want to meet up a dark alley." So yeah, he quite liked that, and he's a very, very strong, tough guy, and somebody I've worked with now, and probably one of the most instrumental guys in me getting my job at the Grand Prix. So yeah, as respect and a thanks and everything, he's going to be there at number 6. So I just got one more to go.
Okay, then drum roll.
Drum roll. So my number 7, I don't think anyone will ever put this in a team on your podcast. That's my prediction.
Go on then.
It is Freddie Williams.
Yeah, not so far.
2 times world champion, and he was Welsh. So that's my link there to somebody that's not many riders come from Wales. So he's not with us now, bless him. But Freddie Williams would be my number 7 just because of what he did, being world champion twice. I'm Welsh. We got a dragon on the flag. We have to be different to everybody else,
Absolutely standard, yeah. It goes without saying.
None of these crosses or things like that. We have to have a big red dragon in the middle.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I was living in Cardiff when there was a football tournament on, and it's a dicey business.
Very.
Right, who would be the referee?
Tough one, because, again, if you've noticed, with my team, I've sort of stayed away from current riders. I've got to be a little bit careful in my decision. I couldn't go with current Grand Prix guys. Wouldn't look great. Well, I suppose Crumpy's still on the scene, but I don't think he's going to be back in the Grand Prix, so I'm okay there. Referees, I've got an affinity with Graham Reeve and Tony Steele because they helped me on the ladder to where I am. Graham Reeve with the under-21, under-16, and Tony Steele involved in me being clerk of the course at Cardiff and working my way up the ladder. So them two are definitely in with a shout. But even though I didn't probably have that many meetings with him, I've worked for 5 years with Graham Brodie as the Speedway Grand Prix secretary, and we've become very good friends, and I've heard so many stories about his refereeing and things he's done and things he didn't and how he's done them. I think without doubt it has to be Graham Brodie as the honorary referee for my meeting.
Graham Brodie in the box. And on the subject of officialdom then, if you could change one rule right now, what would it be?
We've already spoke about it really, but I just generally feel a randomizer at the start is going to make people wait until the tapes go rather than guessing. For me there's 2 words, there's anticipation and there's reaction. We want people to react to the start and not anticipate it. That's the reality. And it's the same in any other sport, whether it be athletics, swimming, cycling. You have to wait for that bang, gun, tapes, whistle, whatever it is. But we can't seem to do that. And it's frustrating for everybody. And it's the most complaints I have about people, having a restart. Why does it happen? And, we've tried our best to not let him in the pits and things like that, but it's a 3-minute delay that a lot of people hate. So somewhere along the line, I would say we've got to try and fix this, some kind of starting issue.
And finally, who would be the opposition against your team of all-stars then? This is any complete team from history that you could invite along.
I think I've already mentioned the team. I was lucky enough to be part of it, so I'm going to be racing against them, which would be a bit of a daunting task. But it's Reading Racers 1992, and I still remember it fondly. And one of the things that I wrote this down. I laugh at people now joking about they can't help it about Speedway Nations being towards the end of October. It'll never happen. Oh, ridiculous putting it on there, British weather. But that year we won the league. We had 18 meetings in October.
Wow.
So there you go. And I think we had double headers, left, right and centres with Bradford, if I remember some of them, with the cup. So that's my team. Reading 1992. Amazing end of the season. But to win a double, that was good enough for me in a kind of league.
Fantastic. And final question to you then is, when you look back at your experience in Speedway, what's the one moment that you look back on with the most affection, perhaps, but also maybe that makes you smile the most?
There's quite a few small ones, really. I've got no massive task. I won the Premier League Best Pairs. I think I won the New Year Classic at Newport, which was the first. Again, something good for my CV. I think it was the very first meeting anywhere in the world in the 20th century. So that's a quiz question that nobody will ever get if they ask who won the first meeting of the 20th century. So things like that. I've made the rostrums of the Premier League Riders' Championship. won some league championships. So yeah, but probably as a one-off day, the Premier League Peers was a good one to win that. And to be honest with you, my career, I'm more than happy that I've met so many nice people, whether it's fans, riders you race with, and you get it is such a family feel for everything. I'm so privileged that I'm in the position I am now. So I'm still going. So I'm still enjoying myself and loving every minute of it.
Okay, Phil Morris, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
No problem, anytime. You have a good one.
I hope you enjoyed that hour as much as I did. It was a fascinating hour, and we didn't even get as far as talking about him being a prolific TV quiz show contestant or his other life as a sandwich tycoon in South Wales, and nor did we find out his favourite flavour of sandwich. Maybe next time. Now, if you enjoyed listening, please give the podcast a rating on your app, or if you'd like to get in touch with your own feedback, you can also contact me via the Humans of Speedway Facebook page, or on Twitter @SpeedwayHumans. Plus, if you haven't checked out previous episodes, there's plenty to keep you occupied, including my chats with Shane Parker, Peter Oakes, Nigel Pearson, and 7-time British champion Scott Nicholls among them. And in each episode, they also choose their ultimate Speedway meeting as well, including their all-time 1 to 7, so check those out. Until next time, stay safe and catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.
Social Podcast Network.
When life throws you unexpected curves, from a small scrape to a larger collision repair, Vic's Auto Body Repair, the insurance claims specialist, is here to help you out. Their top certified professionals specialize in getting you back on the road safely. As a locally owned and operated business, they truly care about you and your vehicle. Rest assured that your vehicle will be repaired correctly, whether it's a large scrape or a larger accident. Vic's Auto Body can handle all your collision repair needs. Stop by Vic's Auto Body for a quick assessment of the damage at 1514 Willow Creek Drive, Iowa City.